Alright, so looks like Twitch is back up. Let's see if YouTube comes back up. And YouTube looks like it's back up. So let me update YouTube. So it's funny. So again, I have three computers running here. All three of them on Wi-Fi. One's on the 2.4 gigahertz channel. The other two are on the 5 gigahertz. No, I'm sorry. Two of them on the 2.4 gigahertz channel, and then one of them, the streaming computers on the 5 gigahertz channel. Got full bars or reception here. Let's see what it says for the strength. I don't see the strength. Windows 10 doesn't show me the strength there, but the little icon with the bars that go up and down as you get Wi-Fi strength, it's completely full. It's the only computer that's dropping. The other two are chugging right along. Never lost internet on the other two at this point, up to this point. Last night I had that problem where the entire network went down, all the computers dropped, my phone dropped, everything dropped. So, not understanding what is going on there. So let me just see, get the YouTube channel to update. Anyway, so I slid the Y carriage all the way forward, tightened up all of those M3 screws. Now I slid it all the way back. Gonna tighten all these up while I'm waiting for YouTube to reload the control room. There it is. Come on. Fighting with the USB cable for this mouse. There we go. And paste and save. All right, back to tightening this up here. Yeah, I'm gonna have to figure out some way to get the wire down here. This is just annoying. And that it's happening more tonight than it did last night is weird. Or earlier anyway. All right, so those are all tightened up. All right, so now we want to move on to step 31, where this is having us put the Y motor pulley. There's a small flat part on the shaft, so I never took the pulley off of here, but I will double check to make sure. And yep, I do have one of the gears lock nuts on that. What is it? One of the screws, one of the lock screws on the flat portion of the motor's arm, and then the other one is tight, and then that's all tight on there. Turn the shaft and slightly tighten the second screw to tighten the pulley firmly. We'll get to that later. I'm just going to go ahead and leave it on there. Oh yeah, we're not tightening the pulley first. Yeah, leaving that on there first. And then next we're going to assemble the belt. So turn the frame on its right side as shown in the picture. So basically we want the motor It's the power supply unit side, or what's gonna be the power supply unit side. So now we need the belt, which was in the package here. And according to the instructions here, we're going to start on the side, on the top side, and run it towards the idler pulley. So you want to make sure that the teeth are all the way to the end of this part and slide it into its home there, so that the teeth all grab on to every single tooth of the printed part to give you as much grabbing power as possible. And then we're going to take the belt, feed it through the top of the idler pulley. Don't trim the belt unless you're asked the instructions. Make sure you won't accidentally use the belt for the x-axis, which is longer, which this is the one that came in this package. There's no other belt in this package, so I did not take any of those parts out yet. And I suggest if you're doing this as a kit and you're kind of following along with instructions, don't take all the parts out of their package, and if you did, put them all back. Don't take the packaging apart until you need it, absolutely need it. And then push it in, which we did push it in. It's all the way in. Going on to step 33, which I've already kind of done. We're going to feed it through the top of the idler pulley there. And ensure the following: don't use the second slot in the Y belt holder. Yep, we don't want to do that. We want to run it underneath. Guide the belt above the rear plate, not below. So we're going to make sure that we're not below. We're going to go above here. And then we're going to do that there, and then turn your printer on its feet and guide the belt around the Y motor. So we're going to put it back on its feet. Got to be careful with this Y motor wire here that likes to be moving around. I'm going to slide that back some. Make sure it's on, and we're going to feed it around the toothed gear on the pulley, or on the motor. And then we're going to slide it into its home on the second part there. So turn the printer back on its side. Got to make sure that bed doesn't shake around too much. And take the end of the belt, pull the belt with a reasonable force, and insert it into the Y belt holder. You don't have to use the whole length of the slot in this case. So I'm going to try and get this belt as tight as possible by hand. That is not that tight. Yeah, so that's way too loose. So let's pull that back out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this end here with my needle nose pliers, stretch it, and start getting it in there. And there we go. And it is a good idea to grab an Allen key. There it is. And push this belt all the way in. And it's still a little too loose for my liking. Let me do this. Loosen up the idler a little bit more. Pull this back out of here. Do the same thing again. Take my needle nose pliers. Kind of grab it straight on the belt. There we go. Get some tension on it. And then get it down into its new home. Allen key to get it seated in all the way. I could use a smaller Allen key. Just gotta make sure both of them are seated all the way in there. There we go. That's still not that tight. Man, why am I absolutely failing on getting this Y belt tight? Is that all fed on there correctly? Yep, that's all on there correctly. That's all on there correctly. All right, I feel a little bit better about that. Yeah, that feels way better. All right. Both should be stretched and not easily bent. However, the final tension will be adjusted later. Make sure the belt is placed in the axis of the printer. Both top and bottom part of the belt should be parallel with each other. So we're going to look down on the belt from the top. And you got the green arrows here. Where's my mouse? There it is. Got the green arrows here that show it shouldn't go left or right, and then everything should be up and down. The axis should be left and the left and right on the blue here. If we need to adjust the pulley, the tooth gear up here, we will. So let's kind of move it back and forth a little bit to see if there's any misalignment of the belt. And this idler pulley back here is working pretty darn good, it seems like. Not missing any steps or anything. Let's turn in with the same rate as the motor side. Everything feels decent here. All right. Using our Allen key, tighten, release the screws on the front plate. Try to adjust both screws in the same way. Using a finger on your left hand, push the belt down. Some force should be needed to bend the belt, but don't try to overstretch the belt. You may damage the printer. So, I mean, that's not a lot of force I've got to use right there. So I'm going to just slowly, little half turn, quarter turn at a time, get these screws tightened. That feels much better. So from the camera, let's see if I can get it. Yeah, so it actually is from the screw hole in the frame. You're correct. It is a bit right, but it's that way the whole length. Like, it doesn't change. Let me see if I can get it to be parallel in the camera view. Didn't realize my camera was twisted so much up there. So anyway, so there we go. So, and I do have this camera crop, so you're kind of looking at it like there's more picture. Like, my hand is right here. If you look at the front view, you're missing all of this, and that camera does go all the way over there. Actually, I can adjust that. Let me slide that over a little bit. It's just I work more in this area, so I wanted to make sure that it all stayed out of the way. So yeah, so as long as this hole, right, stays, and if you look at the printed part, even it's not even so the center of the printed part where these bolts are is right here, is also to the right of that center hole there. And if we take that all the way forward, It doesn't move back and forth as far as I can see. And if we do the same thing this way, so we should again have it where the hole now is just to the right of the center line of the belt. And if we go all the way back, well, forward in this case, and then all the way back now towards the motor, that looks like it's pretty good. Because those holes aren't even lined up with these screws here that hold the motor mount onto place. You can't tell if the motor mount is slightly off center, and then that will mean the idler mount slightly off center. I don't know. So, but it is those holes do not line up center with the belt, but the belt is centered on itself is really what this step is asking us to do. And then using an Allen key, blah, blah, use a finger, so it feels good. Using this to describe below, test the belt is tensioned properly. So basically we want to be on the motor side of things. And then we're going to push the bed all the way to the front in this case. We're going to use our needle-nose pliers. We're going to find the flat portion of the motor shaft. We're going to make sure one of our ends of the needle-nose pliers are grabbing onto that. We're going to hold onto that tight, and basically what's going to have us do is pull on this Y carriage. Let me put this camera back into its normal spot. There we go. And if we can hold the motor shaft tight enough to where it's not going to rotate, we pull in the carriage. If it doesn't skip any teeth on the tooth pulley that's on the motor shaft, then we have good tension on the belt. And that was me moving the shaft. It did skip a couple teeth there. So let me tension up the back side a little bit. See, and I was scared that it was too tight. I can get that a little bit tighter, but not a whole lot tighter. There we go. Oh, let's try and get a little bit tighter. You hear that loud noise? You force too much. I mean, when I was doing it on the other Mk3, I could get a lot of force into that. If the belt is stretched properly, you should feel resistance in the Y carriage. Won't move at all. If the belt is too loose, it will deform, create a wave. So let me just try to tighten this up, and I'll try it again. I really can't get these much tighter. Just a little bit tighter. Because whenever I'm holding it and I'm pulling it, I can see the belt start to deform a little bit. Nope, see, it's not deforming at all now. And you're right, I might have been, because I was pushing my thumb up against the frame, so I might have been pulling. Or try not to put my thumb up against the frame. Yeah, see, now I can't get it to do it all. Yeah, yeah, no, you're right. I might have been, because I was pushing my thumb up against the frame. And that... See, this is how we kind of did it. I don't know if you remember some of the comments in the Mk2S build. It's talking about using a metronome, not a metronome, but a tuning app on your phone and finding that frequency that the belt is supposed to pluck at. I just think it should sound like a guitar, which it does. So anyway, all right, so Y-axis is done. Great job. I've already opened my gummies, but I am going to have some as a reward. We're going to move on to the X-axis assembly. So, get that placed out of the way right there. Hey, Macarena. All right. That's funny because we were just watching Hotel Transylvania 3, Summer Vacation. Movies are goofy. Not to spoil it or anything, so spoiler alert if you haven't seen it and you really care about Hotel Transylvania 3. The end of the movie, the Macarena saves the day. I'm not lying, it really does. It's funny. They're decent movies. They're not the best, but hey, as long as they're enjoyable. I think it's like it's either free on Amazon or Netflix right now. Oh no, I have both. So now, moving on to the X-axis assembly. Got all of our tools somewhere on this table. I'll find them as I need them. Now we're going to need our X-axis and idlers. We're going to need 4 linear bearings. So let me grab all this stuff now. So I actually have... Oh, you live near Transylvania? That's awesome. You ever been to Transylvania? I'm sure if you live near there, you've probably been there before. The Carpathian Mountains. Every time I hear or see the word Carpathian, all I think is, I can't remember which Ghostbusters it was, but the bad guy was a Carpathian. The guy in the painting. Ego? Was it Ego? It was Ego, I think. I don't remember. I think it was Ego. I might be thinking Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, though. Alright, so I have 2 of all of this printed out. Because on my Mk3 build, I broke the motor side. I still have it back there behind me somewhere. To Romania. And I think I've heard that Dracula, the roots of the story was a prince or a king in Romania. So I want to see which one of these. I cleaned one and I didn't clean the other one yet. So I feel like, oh wait, so this is the better of the 2 prints. So I actually printed one of these on the Mk2S and I printed the other on the Mk3. So looking at them, it's very hard to see the difference between the 2. But I can tell from the bottom, or the part where the hits, where the where the bed was, because of the Mk2S, I was having some problems with bed adhesion, and just the bed wasn't flat. So I can see here that, I don't know if you can see it in the camera there. You probably can't, but there's some spots here and some spots here and here where the part isn't exactly perfect. It looks okay from this angle, but this one here, it is perfectly fat. Couple little extrusion lines. Maybe the Live Z needs to go just a hair lower, but overall not bad. It's all pretty clean. Don't see any problems with any of the holes. Might have to file some stuff down, so I'm going to use this one. And let's see if I can see any differences in this one. So this is the bottom. So this is the part where I should be able to tell which one was from which printer. So, yep, so this one's got the same thing here. So a little bit of where it didn't stick to the bed quite right because of the bed wasn't flat. This one is pretty darn smooth and flat. I can kind of feel those little lumps there. Perfect. This also might have been from when I, this one here might be from when I put the palette, the painter's palette, the spatula thingy I used to pull up parts off the bed. Let's see if any of the rest of it looks anything bad at all. Oh, the rest of it looks pretty darn decent. Overhangs look good on both. I think either one of these would be perfect to use. Well, this one's already cleaned up, so I'm going to use this one. Alright, so I got those 2 pieces. So I need my Chapter 3, X-axis bag. There we go. So I'm going to need the 4 linear bearings. And 4 of the linear bearings. There's more than 4 in there. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then this step, this is 3, the x-axis. So I am going to reuse one of the smooth idler pulleys. So I'm going to use the one from the Y side because it doesn't have all the little markings on it. So I think that's the way the instructions go now. I think that you, after you mount the bearings, put the smooth rods before you mount the axis so you don't lose small bearings. I think that's the way you do it now. I can't remember. I found it much easier on the Mk3 build from my recollection of building the Mk2S. So I think that's what they have you do. I don't know. We'll see what the instructions say. So let's let them hear the bearings. That's for the extruder. So now we need that. We need M3 times 18 one nut. So M3 times 18. That's all that's in here. One nut, 1 screw. There we go. And then we need one of the M3 NN nylon lock nuts. So there we go. So we've got that. Note design of your X in part. There we go. Might be slightly different, but the assembly process is the same. So the first thing we want to do is we insert the X-axis. This is another portion where we need to make sure that we're putting the channels of the bearings in the correct orientation. Basically, you want one set north, south, east, west, and then another set on a 45-degree tilt of that, so northwest, southwest, all those things. So I'm going to do my same little process where I mark, actually, it's not going to matter here. Not going to matter one bit here because I can't see them. So never mind, won't waste my time. And then, let me see. I'm going to grab this thing because this thing's been handy working with bearings in the past. First pair of bearings should be in line with the top surface, both X-ends. Both X-ends. Second pair of bearings should be seated in the rim closer to the lower surface of both X-ends. So basically, the bearings don't reach the entire length of this piece here. There's going to be a small gap in the middle here, so you want to seat the first one first. You have to slide them in from the top. There's a little lip here at the bottom that stops the bearing from sliding out the bottom. And then you can see there in this picture, let me just get the full version of this picture going. There we go. So you can see here the first bearing goes almost all the way to the end. Got your lip there where the pink arrow is pointing. There's going to be a gap in between, and then this bearing should be flush with the top, and you'll see that gap in between again. So, and then this is what I was talking about. One of the bearing chases you want to be 90 degrees, so north, south, east, west, and you want the other ones to be a 45-degree twist from that. According to this one, it's got the bottom one because we're looking at the top of one of them here. So I'm going to go ahead and follow exactly what they do and do the 45-degree at the bottom the best I can. That is really tight. Can't orient. Yeah, so one is set gets oriented to that channel. That's a good point there. Make sure that's correct. Yep. Good there. And that is straight down, and 45 degrees, perfect. And now we want this one to be 90 degrees. North, south, east, west. There we go. See, I see it as opposite. I see it as because we're looking at the top, so we're actually looking at, the way I'm looking at this piece right now, we're looking at this piece just like that in that picture. So I see it as the opposite route. So this is the, you know, little cutout here for the motor. That's the bottom portion. So this L portion here, the arm goes out. Here's our mounting holes for the trapezoidal nuts. So it looks like to me that their bottom bearing, the back bearing in this picture, is the one that's aligned with the slot. And then the one that's closest to us has the north, south, east, west orientation. So that's what I'm gonna do this at. I don't think it matters as long as you have one way and one the other way. I don't really think it's a big deal if you have them, you know, opposite orientation from the picture, as long as they are in the 45-degree turn orientation. But I'm just gonna go ahead and go with what Prusa's picture shows there. So we're going to do the same thing here. Going to orient this first one to the slot. Oh, gotcha. Sorry, I thought you meant to the part itself, like to the actual X, Y, Z axis of the part, not the slot. I think I was just reading your chat too fast. I do that a lot. I think the human brain does that a lot. Yep, that's good. And now this one goes 45 degree. North, south, east, west orientation. And that looks good. All right, bearings are placed. Don't need this anymore. All right, let's go back to the instructions now. So now we're gonna have. So now we do have the R2, the R3, excuse me, the R3 revision of the X-axis motor side motor mount. So we're gonna need an M3 square nut, and then we're gonna need an M3 times 18 screw. So M3 times 18 screw, that is exactly that. And then square nut. And then this square nut goes into this hole right here. And this is going to be one of the ways of tensioning the X-axis in the future. This is also where I messed up on the last build, and why I made sure to have another printed part available in case I break this one too. Their instructions are a little, in my opinion, cryptic. Once you get to the portion where you're tensioning it, I'm going to take a little bit more time today and make sure that I get it right before I tighten it too tight, because tightening it too tight will break this piece off here. Still feel like this whole tensioning system of this motor could be improved. I've seen quite a few iterations on many different sites where you can get parts. Many different ways of remaking this whole carriage assembly. Because this way, when you do it the way they show here, it only tightens the belt up about a tooth. So you still have to do most of the work in making sure you get the belt installed correctly first time around. Get the motor back and mount it, and then loosen it again to get this tight. So it's a multiple step process. So we got that tensioner assembly in there. Now we're going to want to make sure we got the idler bearing assembly in. So we need to get the nylock nut into the back side of the idler pulley mount, which is another case where we're probably going to have to grab a screw, thread it on backwards to the nylock nut, which actually isn't that easy to do. Ooh, almost dropped it. You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to take a longer 18 screw here. Come on. Slid all the way through one way. Get this pushed through the idler pulley here. Onto the other side. That's way too long. You know what, the 18 might actually work. Yeah, let's grab it in. How far do they show it going into its home? Tends to be very careful during tightening. Check the nut orientation. Do not use excessive force. You can break this part, yeah, because you're dealing with really thin walls here. That's why I put the pulley in there, so that I didn't pull the pull the parts together too tightly there. So it's in the nylock nut. It's nice and tight, not going to back itself out. It's in the nut almost all the way through, so I'm happy with that. Secured in place with the M3x18 screw. Now if needed, use the M3 screw to pull the nut in. Place it. Did you tighten the shaft screw from Y-axis after you finished? Tighten the shaft screw. You're talking about the hold on, from the motor? Oh yeah, no. So I never loosened the motor shaft screws. The shaft was already on there from the Mk2S. so now we need the smooth rods. We need the longer of the two sets left. There we go. So here's the remaining rods that we have. And so there's our two short ones. Those are two long ones. We need the two long ones. So let's two short ones back in there. All right. Okay. Now we want to grab the three remaining linear bearings. I'm going to mark these the best that I can. Sharpie marker here. Oh, where are you going? Running away from me. So I'm going to mark where these bearing traces are at. And then one of them goes onto this threaded rod. Again, you want to gently push it through, making sure none of the ball bearings are forced out. If you have any force, just back it up. And try again. This one threaded through. And last one. All right. Now get this last one on there. And there we go. Solo bearing, I would align the rod, the center of the channel, the small bearing. Yeah, so do it at the 45-degree angle with the single bearing, so that there's two channels kind of pressing at the 45 with the on the smooth rod, and then the other two can be 45 degree from each other again. All right, so we got those loaded on there. Again, warning. Gently insert the smooth rods into the bearings. Do not apply too much force in case you want to push out balls. One or two of them missing will be okay. Anything more, consider buying new ones. So now we're going to press fit these in here. So with our motor mount on the left side, and then our, why are you having problems focusing up there? And then our idler mount on the right side, we want the 2 bearing to be on top, the single bearing to be on the bottom. The R3 version does have these little windows here and here on both printed parts now. That's something they updated from the original printed parts, to where you can see if the smooth rod is pressed all the way. That is the wall that the smooth rod should be pressed up against inside of the part. So we're going to start with one side. So I'm going to start with the top of the motor mount side and get this pressed in. Do want to be careful. Once I get all the parts together, I can kind of use some force on the table to put it in there, because they're not seating in all the way. Oh, that one did seat all the way the first try. Then I can get the other side on. In and that one's in. So now looking in those windows, you can probably see in the camera just a little bit of a shine. You can see that I can see from looking down that little window that the end of these smooth rods are butted up against the walls in there. My idler spins freely, no problem. And there we go. We've got the X-axis started. Special opening at the bottom of both X-hinge. So this is what they're talking about there. You don't want any gap, so here's that window. So you can see the gap that they're showing in that picture there. You do not want any gap like that. The smooth rod should be butted up right against that window right there. So assembling the X motor. So now we need the X motor and the X motor pulley. So easier to find. There it is. Sure, this is the X motor, X motor. So I got the X motor. You see, it says the X axis, and it already has. I never took off the toothed gear here. So the GT216 pulley. I've already installed this the way it's supposed to be. It's installed the same way as it was in the Mk2S. So I'm not going to even uninstall it. I will move it back and forth if need be once we get everything on the belt done and everything. We do want to make sure we put it onto the X-axis assembly correctly. So if we look on the picture here with the arch of the motor assembly facing up, we want the wire to be down. We do need 3 M3 times 18 screws. So we have those in this package here. 1, 2, 3. And then we place all 3 of those in. We don't need to tighten them all the way. We need to tighten it up so that the motor's safe and securely mounted to our assembly here. Start with the top left. I will tell you that the threads on the motor housing are very fine and very delicate. So if you're having problems getting the screw started with the threads, take your time, back it out. If you do run into, like I ran into here, this hole going through this part here, the plastic opening is a little low on tolerance, so you do have to kind of use the threads to eat through the plastic, which is perfectly fine. Or you could take a file and file out the hole a little bit more. In my case, I'm okay with it. I will just get it down until it hits the plastic and down there. Perfect. Not even going to tighten it up all the way yet. And then do the same thing here. Just get that down to the plastic. Now part of the tensioning for the X belt, these 2 holes are elongated, so you really shouldn't have a problem threading the screw through these 2 holes, but this one here is sized for this screw, so that's why I had that little bit of a problem because with 3D printing, there's always a little bit of a tolerance. All right, so we entered those in. Not a problem whatsoever. Now we need our X carriage preparation. So we need the X carriage part, and we need 5 M3 square nuts. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we're going to need 2 zip ties. Alright, so it says note on there on step 11 that the design of your X carriage printed part might be slightly different, but the assembly process is exactly the same. So let me show you what they're talking about here. So let's zoom in. So this is the old part, and then I've got my hand near the new R3 part. So let me orientate it like they have it in the picture there. Yeah, if the threads on the motor are stripped, the motor's trash. And you don't want to be without some kind of motor. You don't want your motor to be not secured correctly. But this is the orientation they have in the picture there. As you can see, the biggest difference is going to be these posts that the old belt path took. It went through this slot around this post and back on itself, so the teeth of the belt held it into place. The new one here gets rid of those posts. It's just a channel that has the teeth built into it, and you trim it to the exact length. Before, you had belt coming out the other side, and that extra belt, if not trimmed to the right size, could interfere with movement on the x-axis. And then also, if you trimmed it too much and you needed to readjust for tensioning, either loosen or tighten, having that extra trimmed off would be a danger. This is still a danger if you, or not danger, but the belt would become useless because too much would be trimmed off. The same thing can happen here, but they use this side here of this to tension it more. So I didn't have a problem on the Mk3 full kit build. So the upgrade build here, you know, I'm anticipating, knock on wood 3 times, that I'm not going to have any problems. But we want to make sure we get all these nuts placed in the correct spots first, though, because these are going to be very important once we get to the further on in the assembly. So there's the spots marked in the blue. You want to make sure and place all 5 of these in. I did have a problem with one of the holes in the past, in the previous build. Let me see if this printer part's going to give me any problems. Yeah, it's going to give me a little bit of problems. Nope, actually not at all. That one actually went in pretty darn good. Grab one of your 2.5 Allen key here. Get that nut nice and aligned with that hole there. Yep, and it doesn't fall out. So that's good. We've got 2 down here. Get in there. I know that when I did the second video where I upgraded the parts, I went from that old part to this part. I had forgotten to move these square nuts over, and I had already had it all mounted onto the carriage, so mounting these nuts was a pain in the arse. If you viewed that video, I don't think I had anybody on the stream that day. Flavors, I think that's a stream you missed. Especially because this hole here is starting to give me a little bit of problems. I think I might need to file it down some. Grab this round file here. And it's in a precarious spot too. You really can't get the file at a good angle on it. Or maybe you were on the stream because you were talking about heating the nuts up and putting them in. I don't remember if it was this piece or another piece. No, that was another piece. I can't remember what piece that was now. Another part. On to these here. Save the hard ones for last. Yeah, see, that's going perfect. Yeah, see, no problem there. So let's just these two holes that want to give me the headaches tonight. Is a simple way to mount nuts. What do you mean? I mean, I don't know if you're going completely off topic and on the something different, or if I'm just completely find the longest screw, put nut only half thread, then place it in the hole and tap the screw with something to make the nut go in. Let's try it. Game. There we go. It's just getting it started in its home. That's the hard part. It's these square nuts that, and they're going in sideways too, so it's not like they're going straight in. So the nuts I'm having problems with right now is these two right here. So even if I do this, it is started some, but if I let go of it with my other finger, it will fall right out. Nope, nope, went right in. Good job. Oh, not the square nuts. No, it still worked. Yeah, you're talking about the hex-shaped ones, not the square ones. Yeah, no, but it still worked. That's a really good way to do it, actually. I did have to file them a little bit more, but if you use a longer screw, use that to get the square nut ends in. And I am using the pliers a little bit to kind of make sure that they're started. But it worked on that side. Let's see if it'll work on this side. There we go. So yeah, so if you get that first part of it into its new home, use your finger to kind of hold it in place, and then use the pliers to push it the rest of the way in. Yeah, worked perfect. So still sound advice. Still very sound advice. That one wants to move around some. So put that back in there, put that there. All right, so we now want to take our X carriage assembly, flip it around so that the motor is on our right side and up with the wire facing down, so that we have our two bearings on top, one bearing on the bottom. We're then going to, that one wants to just pop right out. Gotta be careful, these nuts don't fall out of there. So we've got the two on the top, one on the bottom, and then the printed part also has a longer channel for the two bearings and then a single channel for the bottom bearing. So we're gonna get this lined up. And to flavor this point earlier, I'm gonna get these as close as I can to, so the bottom one is at a 45-degree angle to the path it's going to travel, so that two channels are on the top and two channels are on the bottom at a 45-degree angle. So you've got a lot of path that it's going to, a lot of bearing channels that it's going to travel against. And I'm going to use my black permanent marker lines to do the 45-degree angle from the the Z-axis bearings. I'm going to put one up and down and one at a 45-degree angle to it. Slide this piece under, and then we need to put the zip ties in a certain way. So we're going to zoom in on this picture here so that we can see that. Yep, that's what I was just doing. So it looks like that the head of the zip tie is going to start the orientation I have down and towards us, because you want it to end up at the top and all the way up against the printed part. So there's 2 channels. There's one right here, and the zip tie just goes right through there. And I'm gonna go ahead and place this zip tie through here. All right, and then I can go ahead and get the zip tie started. Pull the printed part up so that it goes, so that the bearings are in their home. I'm going to try to make sure, sorry, my head's going to kind of block the way there. I've got the bearings at the angles that I want them to be at. That one's good. Yeah, there's only 2 zip ties, one on each bearing for this. And then let's move on. And then we're going to leave the single bearing loose right now. So we're actually going to have to make sure we get that access correct later on. So yeah, so there's only one zip tie in each. Now I will say that there is, if you haven't watched my other build, if you don't remember, there is another piece that sandwiches down onto this piece. You can't actually get to the belts easily on the Mk3 once you have the entire thing assembled. There's actually a whole back plate that kind of locks everything into place. So that could be the reason why. This is just to kind of hold it into place temporarily for now, provide you with some pressure on the piece while we're doing this. I remember when I was building the Mk3 a couple weeks ago, a couple streams ago, that the I was complaining that this was loose, but then later on in the instructions I figured out why. Because I don't even think there's a zip tie that this one has. This one just gets sandwiched in with the other piece. So now, according to instructions, our x-axis is finished. So time to reward ourselves with some Hambro gummy bears. I think the orange ones are my favorite. Definitely. But I'll eat all of them. All right. So now let's move on to the z-axis assembly. Difficulty moderate. So we're gonna take our x-axis, carefully place it out of the way for now. We're gonna bring our superstructure frame back into frame. We need our z-axis assembly motors, brackets. Printed parts aren't the same. There's a left and right bracket, so let's go ahead and grab these. And then here we go. So what they're talking about is, you can see from the top view there, there's the large opening for the X motors with the integrated lead screw shaft. Right there on the outside of those is where the smooth rods are going to go in. So you want to make sure that the smooth rods are on the outside. And the new parts, the R3 parts, do not have the hole for the smooth rod to go down and hit the motor. There's actually some layers there that prevent it from hitting the motor casing. They're very thin. I think it's only probably, well, no, it's not actually not that thin. It's actually probably about 1 millimeter thick. So we want to make sure we get these in the correct orientation. So this one goes on this side. This one goes on this side. And now we need our Z-axis bag. There it is, chapter 4. Z-axis bag. We need M3 times 10 millimeter times 6 screws. Grab a drink of water real quick. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 5, 6. And so now moving on, I'm going to look at the Prusa logo side. So in the overhead video there, you can make out a little bit the Prusa logo. And according to the picture, we got our parts oriented correctly here, with the smooth rod portion going to be going out to the outside. And place perimeter next to the frame. See the picture for the correct orientation. Let me zoom in on that so you guys can see what I'm talking about there. There we go. I don't know why it doesn't want to zoom in, but there we go. You can see the hole for the smooth rod is there, and then I've got the same thing here. So to my left for the smooth rod, to my right for the smooth rod. And each one of these takes 3 M3 10 millimeter long. So tighten each part. Don't use excessive strength during the tightening. So this is kind of like the motor, only you wouldn't trash your entire frame. But you obviously don't want to over thread these or over tighten these. You don't want to strip the threads, because once you strip the threads on this frame here, it's done for basically. So just be cautious. If you feel any type of resistance when starting it, back it back out, try again. So I just felt a little bit of resistance there. So try starting it on another one now. What's going on here? Hold on, I think I got some orange plastic on the between teeth of this screw. Where's my brush things? I'm just going to try a different screw. Let me do this first. See if I can get it started without the printed part in the way. That's still pretty tough. Try some on this side. So I am feeling a fair amount of resistance on every hole that I'm trying. So I guess it is just a lot more resistance than what I'm used to. Don't remember having that much resistance on the other frame, but I could have been wrong. I could be wrong. So let's just go for it. Just make sure they're straight. I can double check. Let me look. So here's our z-axis, and then M3 times 10. Yep, nope. According to that, that is the correct one. You look at the bag here. There are no other types of screws to speak of. Let's zoom in on this picture here. Yep, these are our box head hex screws. So yeah, no, this looks like it's the correct screws. There's no other types of screws in here anyway, besides longer of the same thing, which wouldn't make a difference for starting the screw. It would make a difference for how it penetrates the part. It goes out the other side in this case. Yeah, I'm gonna try a couple more different ones. And then I've got a bunch of them in there that I know have threaded into one of these printers before. So I'll try one of these next if this one doesn't start. And it's still pretty hard. So let me get... Now I can't tell if they powder coat after they thread or before they thread. Grab one of these existing M10. Yep, that's an M3 times 10 screw right there. Right, hold on. Doesn't hurt to double check. M3 times 10. Yep, that's an M3 times 10. I mean, yeah, no, it's just tight. I mean, that was a tiny bit easier, but not by a lot. And once I got it in, it goes a lot easier, so it doesn't feel like it's stripping. Now you can feel it when a screw's stripping. I'm gonna pull this closer to me so I can see what's going on here. Yeah, it could be the screw thread is faulty, or maybe their screw tap is faulty for this frame. That's really hard once you get it started, but then once you get it a certain way in, it's no longer as hard. I say that, and that one's actually pretty hard. And then once you get right there, now it's perfectly fine. Still need some torque on it. It's screwing down nice and tight. I can see that part there. There we go. Get this third screw in the bottom hole here. We'll go back to the instructions here.